Hi everyone. Check, 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 check. I'm still waiting. I would be careful. Great, awesome. I know you guys want to talk more, but we'll have lunch at 12. So we're going to get started with our next session on PNNL WSU Regional Grid Research Initiatives. We have 4 talks on this particular session, and I'll be inviting each of the speakers individually with a bio, and they'll be speaking for 10 to 12 minutes, and we'll have some time for a couple of questions after that, and go from there. So our first speaker today is Jim Ogle, Director of Electricity Infrastructure Sector at PNNL. He'll be talking about PNNL Grid Portfolio. So brief introduction, Jim Ogle is the Director of Electricity Infrastructure Sector at Pacific Northwest National Lab, where he leads initiatives aimed at modernizing the US electric grid for a more resilient and reliable energy future. With over 30 years of experience spanning utility transmission and distribution operations, distributed intelligence system, advanced energy management and cybersecurity, Jim directs research in advanced distribution systems, sensors and data analytics, communication systems and secure grid operations. He holds patents in data management and smart meter communication, enhancing systems reliability and resiliency. Jim is an active member of International Electrotechnical Commission and earned degrees in electrical engineering from Seattle University and Columbia University. So let's welcome Jim.
Thanks, Sedona. Everybody hear me okay? I'm going to talk a little bit about the type of research that PNNL does, and collaborations with folks like WSU and the AGI and the industry partners. We've got a really broad, diverse portfolio, and I'm not going to kind of go over all of that. So I wanted to focus in on kind of a key theme here today to give you a little bit of our perspective and some key challenges and focus areas that we have. I think probably not surprisingly from some of the previous discussion today, there's some key challenges that we're looking at the grid that, from our sponsors on the DOE side, our industry partners, and challenges they're bringing to us. And as we look at what's appropriate for the national lab and the innovation and science that we provide, I think there's we're in a time that's associated with the grid of a target-rich environment for us to make contributions and help us move forward in addressing reliability, security, and affordability of energy delivery at a time when it's become more critical than ever that we have that. There's I wanted to highlight a few key areas where we in our research programs and are focusing in on some of our efforts and putting our resources towards addressing some of these challenges. And in the context that we work in today, it's things like the increasing demand, whether that's from the environment of AI and data centers and facilities to be able to support that and taking advantage of all the things that we can do for us across the nation, across different domains. Providing much higher demand, large loads with different behaviors than our typical loads that we've been facing when we talk about large loads. And then other demand increases, whether it's onshoring manufacturing, electrification of transportation or buildings. We're at a time now where we've got significant growth compared to decades past, where we've been not really facing those types of demand. And so with that, we got to look at how do we build out the right infrastructure, how do we build out the right solutions to support that, but at the same time not increase the cost and impact affordability. That's one of the challenges that we have to be working towards. As we start adding in those more, these new types of load that have much faster dynamics, or they change much more rapidly, going up or down, or going up and down in a cyclical manner. And we get more and more inverter-based resources, power electronics in the system. We now have fast acting devices on the supply side, as we think about these very large loads, as well as fast acting devices on the demand side. Sorry, I can mix that up. But with inverter-based resources on the supply side and demand side, things like data centers. And so the dynamics of the grid, the things that fundamentally we manage around voltage and current, are much more changing, and our current controls and current protections, our current coordination systems weren't necessarily designed to operate in these behaviors. We weren't engineered to do that. And so we need to be looking at how are we going to advance those things and have adapting to be able to support these new environments. And then we know there's a multiple, the grid is under constant stress, and so stressors are they're always evolving and changing the context under which we have to work on, whether those are natural threats with storms, wildfires here for us in the Northwest, although spreading out in regions that we wouldn't even imagine the wildfires a few years ago. And then, man-made threats. Unfortunately, there are folks for various reasons that may want to, attack our critical infrastructure. And so as we look at these fundamental challenges, we have to look at, what are the innovations? And I would argue that the scale and the speed that these things are changing are much different and much more, offer much more challenges to us as an industry than we've seen for a very long time in the industry. And because of that, I think we need to be working together in new ways across the industry to be working towards addressing these challenges to support the goals that we have. So one of the things that PNNL has, and that some of our research really kind of is driven by, is some of these objectives of meeting these big industry challenges and international scale challenges. And a reliable and secure grid is one of those. And we've had a lab objective around this and worked on projects, whether it's with WSU or others, that are really supporting those kind of goals. And this year, as we went through and looked at that, we tuned this up a bit, kind of thinking about those previous three kind of big challenge areas. And so, really, as we look at that, we're thinking that what we want to do is, thinking about that time scale. We need to accelerate the next generation of reliable and secure grid operations. And so I'm kind of bundling in a lot of things there in the operations, whether that's, again, you mentioned protection controls, but what is the operator? Operators, how do they respond to this? Where does AI fit into that? How can it help us? How can we make sure that it doesn't hurt us or harm us? Those are the kind of things that we need to be looking at so that we can get out there and get the kind of tools and capabilities and resources put in place to be able to achieve the goals that we want. So within PNNL and within our partners that we work with here, there's a couple different thrust areas, just a couple that I'm going to highlight here. One is around coordination control, right? Is how do we look at the different dynamics of the grid? How do we model inverter-based systems out there? And how do we look at the combination of different systems? Whether that's the traditional supply that we have, the rotating machines, hydro, or solar inverter-based resources, and the different types of loads that are out there. How do we balance all of those things? How do we bring in coordination with the flexibility that is on resources that exist out on the distribution side? How do we take advantage of new opportunities out there, whether it's large-scale fleet electrification? The scale of doing all of that is a grand challenge for us. And that's where I think we are really compiling our resources, broad resources, to bring together solutions to support this. So on the controls, we've been doing a few investments, internal investments on that. We've got projects with Grid Office of Electricity and grid controls and coordination. And controls means, sensing, communications, the broad work of controls as well. And then, of course, we've spoke here before around the investment we've had for many years now in the leadership in energy storage. And particularly here in my domain, that grid energy storage is important. We also support the transportation industry and other industries. But as we think about these different changes that we have, the uncertainty, the changing fast-acting behavior that we see in loads and in our supply side, a lot of the challenges that we have with the current system, with these new dynamics, is fundamentally the system is designed to balance supply and demand on a millisecond by millisecond basis, right? When somebody flips the light switch somewhere, something's adjusting ever so slightly to make sure that that's got source right on time. And that makes things very challenging for operators as we start having large fluctuations and fast-acting things, right? We got to maintain the supply across all of that. Storage provides a unique opportunity for us. Sure, we've got backup power and resiliency, and that's a great use for it. As we think about supporting the data centers, they can put in large batteries, and we're working with them to see what type of technologies, chemistry, materials support their specific use cases. But the storage provides a real important part from a reliability perspective, from a stability of the grid, because it too can act fast, right? It can be one of those fast responders for us. It can provide a buffer for some of the variations and uncertainties that we have. If we think about how do we leverage flexibility from the edge, part of the coordination challenges we have is, again, that instantaneous. How can an operator be sure it's going to happen? But what if you put in storage in that picture, in that equation? Is if you could be taking flexibility at the time that they happen to be able to provide it and putting that in storage so it can be more readily available in those kinds of periods, then you start to add an element of more certainty that yes, that will happen. So we're investing heavily in how to put together storage as an intrinsic part of what I would say the operations of their systems into, say, the control fabric, make it just part of that reliability asset as well as all of the other services that we can provide. So that's why those are kind of built in together. And I just want to wrap up here and say, part of the enablers that we have here is, certainly we are, I would say, we are the most experienced grid lab in the DOE complex. If you look at the decades that we've been doing this, you can just look at Jeff Daigle and the time frame he's been working on. And that's the embodiment of that term. But so through that, coordinating with industry, with academic partners, we've ended up with, for us, and because of all of you, a trusted there's trust that we have in the models that we do, the analytics that we use. We use, off-the-shelf commercial tools from our vendor partners, so that we can have trust in this, and we augment them where necessary. As we go forward, we're looking at AI and how that can help us in both the design and the planning, and support this objective as well as the other things we have, even the resource adequacy and some of the regional planning we're doing. And then we do have a very strong, you might have heard about it this morning, but half of the lab, if not more, is dedicated to national security. And so, the capabilities that brings to the table, when we combine those with the deep expertise in grid operations, grid planning, grid modeling, we provide there's a unique perspective that we can bring and capability we can bring to really address that reliability and that security part of this challenge. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of what we're doing, one of the focus areas that we have, that really WSU has been involved with this, others, we've got industry partners here that are involved in this, and that's the other enabler, is I think we like to believe that we have a strong industry partnership and relationships with all of you, and as I close out here, I just encourage you to reach out to me, reach out to the others here at PNNL, reach out to Dominica and Wade, how can we work more together to address and face these challenges as one. Thank you.
All right, so we're open for one or two questions.
I thought I was going to get away with the question.
Check. Yeah, my name's Isa. I'm a software engineering student here at WSU Pullman campus, and I'm also part of the IEEE. And I wanted to ask, with utilities facing staffing shortages as veteran operators retire, as you were mentioning, how is PNNL exploring AI and human collaboration to help ease that gap? And from your perspective, from PNNL, what skills should students be focused on to contribute those solutions?
Great question. So a couple things I'll mention there is one is, PNNL has the opportunity to we do lab directed research. And so we do have some research kind of been looking at aspects around the control center, the operating center, and we've got some new ones kicking off here around how does AI fit into that calculation. And that's a very strong push for us. And one of the key aspects of that is working directly with kind of bringing in those utility advisors into that. So we're actually right in the middle of the phase of pulling in and getting utility folks that want to kind of bringing that conversation. We have a facility from the Office of Electricity and DOE called the EIOC, and that basically is kind of a control center environment, and we see that as where we can really build out, validate, and demonstrate that control room of the future that's kind of looking at these new ways of doing things. And that's where I think we had the opportunity. In the past, we brought in, there was operator training that occurred there. I think that we can bring in that type of environment too, to partner with industry, to say, here's how we might be able to help show, here's where the realm of the possible is. Now they can tell us what's the realm of the practical and work together in that. And with storage, we connect the GSL side of that too, and having the models and the capabilities there. So you're in an excellent position in terms of what should you be studying. I think certainly the fundamental of computer science, data analytics, but also I think I would suggest that you reach out wherever you can to look at cross-domain collaborations, because in this future, I think that's what's going to be really critical is kind of a new breed of the engineers and the scientists that are helping us that can have their focus areas, but they really can appreciate the domains of those others that have to come together for the solution.
Thank you, Jim. We're going to move on with the session. How about we leave it towards the end if we have time? Sorry about that. So our next speaker is Dr. Mani Venkat Subramaniam. Mani Venkat Subramaniam is a Boeing Distinguished Professor in Electrical Engineering at Washington State University, Pullman. He also serves as Director of the Energy Systems Innovation Center, which manages the power engineering research and education at WSU. He serves as the Chair of the IEEE Power and Energy Society Working Group on Power Systems Dynamic Measurement. He's an elected member of Washington State Academy of Sciences. He was an invited member of the working groups that studied the 1996 Western Interconnection blackouts and the 2003 Northeastern blackout, so he knows all the inside scoop. Mani has been working on the modeling, stability analysis, and control designs for power grids for the past 30 years. He is an IEEE Fellow for his contributions to the online detection of oscillatory behavior of electric power systems. He is a recipient of IEEE PES Prabha Kundur Power Systems Dynamics and Control Award. He also holds a joint appointment with PNNL as Chief Scientist.
Thank you, Anamika. I didn't have anything to do with that biography. But Anamika, thank you very much, and I want to welcome all of you to our beautiful Tri-Cities campus, and thank you for inviting me to talk about ESIC. So, our Energy Systems Innovation Center, I want to say it started with the Power Professorship Program, which was founded in 1973. The CEOs of Washington Water Power, which now is called Avista, and Grant County PUD, Jeff started this, read the crystal ball, and saw that there was a need for the workforce development to sustain the power programs in the region. So they set up industry, university kind of a collaboration where many of the utilities in the state of Washington contributed annually, and then they set up a fellow indoor professorship at WSU to grow the power program. And it's amazing that it has continued now for 52 years. We celebrated our 50th anniversary in 2023. And you see Dr. Ed Schweitzer, who is the founder of Schweitzer Engineering Labs. He's one of the proud alumnus of our program. And the center's our vision, I don't want to go through all of this. We have a threefold vision. Teaching is key, or education is a key component. Research as well as outreach. I'll briefly talk about these in the 10 minutes that I We have a very strong set of faculty that I am proud to be colleagues of, including, I just hold it, including Professor Bose, who couldn't be here, Noel, and several distinguished colleagues here in the room. And I want to highlight Rahul, I think he is here, who is a new faculty. He just joined in January. And Millard, I don't know if Millard is here. And Bolu, here in Tri-Cities campus, who is also a new faculty in the center. So you can see we are growing. And also we have joint appointees like Anamika mentioned as part of the AGI, scientists at PNNL who are research professors at WSU. I saw Kevin this morning. Kevin Schneider, he is hiding somewhere. And Dedu, who is here. And as joint faculty, they get to advise students at WSU as well. Along with that, we have colleagues in other departments who work closely with us on the power grid area. I have to figure out how this works.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just slow to respond. Including, I see Alan, who is in economics, and he works closely with us on power grid related research. We have faculty in pretty much any department who works in the power grid area. They can be part of our E6 center. Our staff, you can meet Jenny and Jake, who are helping with this meeting. And Darlene, I don't know, that slide just went by. Darlene is also part of our center. She is having Nana time with her grandchild this week, so she couldn't be here. And these are our focus areas. I don't want to go through all of the details. I just want to thank our members. Mainly our center is supported in the form of two industry memberships. One supports undergraduate research program, other supports the graduate research. And the undergraduate education, and we call it the education partnership or education partnership or the PEP program. And this provides scholarship opportunities for the students, for sending the students to conferences. And one of the unique things we have now, something called the PEP scholarship, where we give $1,000 or $2,000 to freshman electrical engineering students, with the only caveat that they should take at least one power course. And so that's a bribe to get them to think about the power program, and it's been effective. We have a really growing program and interest in the power area. And we want to thank our members. I see Avista here and several other from across the state. And the research program, again, this is to support research in the power area. And PNNL has been a member since the center beginning. So we want to thank PNNL for the support. And again, Avista, and we have Portland General and Larry. So, you know, the members of the program are our preferred partners for research. Typically, they serve as our project advisors, and we bid together on proposals. So it's a great relationship that's mutually beneficial. And I just want to highlight a couple of research projects to show the kind of work we do at ESIC. One is led by Anamika. This is funded by DOE. It's a project for developing a microgrid solution for a high wind region in Chicago. This project is currently on hold because of the federal uncertainties that all of us are going through, but we hope that the project will resume soon. And the other project I want to highlight is something that I am leading, and this is a new project that is in collaboration with Iowa State University and Southwest Power Pool. And this is looking at the planning process. Morning, the keynote speeches talked about the growing uncertainty in how we run the power grid. And so how do we plan for the system 10 years, 20 years down the road? What kind of models we develop? How do we bring in the concept of resilience and these high impact, low probability events, which are no longer low probability if they keep happening more and more frequently. And so somehow we need to justify investing in the system to plan and to prepare for those events. So that's part of what we are developing in this project. So I will stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mani. Questions? Okay. Then we move on. Okay. All right. So thanks, Mani, again.
Yeah, Larry had a question.
Oh, sorry.
He is not a plant.
Sorry.
Manny, yes, Larry Beckett-All. And Crystal Ball painted a great picture this morning of the gap. Do you have any thoughts on how university, PNNL can assist with thinking about that? How do we address and start to bring attention to how the system is looking here very quickly and where that gap is coming?
Yeah, this is really the biggest challenge we see in this project as well, because even we saw this year with the policy change, all the plans that were done thinking there is going to be so much wind and solar, that might change very well looking at 3-4 years down the road. But already some decisions have been made, there have been some investments. So all of this, all I'm saying is the problem is very much real and very challenging in terms of how we develop these models. What I'm hoping is, this is something that Jim referred to, somehow we need to tap the potential of AI in maybe training some new mechanisms or new processes that can better help us, and some of these decisions would have to be made stochastic rather than probabilistic, where we weigh the benefits and try to take the most educated guess really for where the system is leading. But the challenge is real, and we are very excited to be working together in finding the solutions. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Mani. All right. So moving on to our next talk on Institute of Northwest Futures by Noel Schulz. Noel Schulz is the Bob Ferguson Endowed Professor at Washington State University, Tri-Cities. In August of 2023, she was named the inaugural director of WSU's new Institute for INEF, headquartered on the WSU Tri-Cities campus. Dr. Schulz has been active for over 30 years in teaching, research, and service at 6 U.S. universities. Her current research interests include rural electrification and microgrids, AI applications to power systems, and system integration across the energy ecosystem. She's a fellow of IEEE and the American Society of Engineering Education, and a member of the Washington Academy of Sciences.
Great, thank you. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
I use my hands too much, I can't hold the mic. So great. I'm really excited to talk to you about our Institute for Northwest Energy Futures and what's happening with that. And both of the questions for the first two speakers really set up well what INEF is about. And how are we looking at the system across the board, or the energy ecosystem? That we talk about different silos, but how do we get those groups talking to each other, understanding each other, and not having unintended consequences because one sector does something one way without talking to another sector. So I'll start off with this group, the grid. Let's look at that as a great example, right? As I think about my 30 plus years as a faculty member and doing research and activities in the grid space, and I will say I'm a grid girl, so for the last 2 years I've learned a lot about energy and the energy ecosystem. But when we look at the past, we look at a fairly simplistic. You look at these arrows, most of them are going one way, and so with that it was pretty simplistic. And my dad got a PhD in power engineering, so it was my dad's power grid. As we look at today's grid, the complexity, a lot of those arrows are going back and forth. We've got a lot of new things added. and new generation types that are working for advanced nuclear, whether that's advanced nuclear fission or fusion. We also have hydrogen, we have biofuels that are coming in. We added, as we saw, a lot more wind and solar, and as was mentioned, it's non-dispatchable. And we're starting to see solar popped up. Crystal's graph is a great example to show this. But what I think probably the most changes have been on the load side, as we've looked at the grid as really being the focus on how do we have a cleaner environment related to our energy sources. And so we've seen electric vehicles coming in, we've seen data centers have been talked about, solar and wind on both at the distribution level. But if you look at this, it's a system. Now a lot of you out in the audience are grid people, like myself, but what we need to make sure we're doing is talking to all the different aspects of the system. So as I talk about INEF, I just want to share kind of how do we get out of our silos across the energy ecosystem and work towards coordinated system solutions. Because the challenge is, as I said earlier, a lot of times we create a solution and it may have impacts in other areas of the energy ecosystem. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things we're doing at INEF related to kind of looking at more systems approach than maybe has been done in the past. One of the ones is engagement of advanced nuclear and large load customers. So we are fortunate that this fall, working with Energy Northwest and Columbia Basin College, we will have a small modular reactor simulator installed in our INEF building. And that will enable us to do training and other activities, coursework, and talk about that. Really excited about that. And some of the talks, I said, how are we interfacing with the grid? We want to understand how the SMRs interface with the grid and how the grid will do that. So I am holding my grid side up when we have those discussions. We also had a well-attended, about 180 people in the hybrid format, attend a small modular reactor webinar and seminar and panel. And that was in person, it was for the public. A lot of people are, what is an SMR? What does that mean? And one of the things we're really working to do as well is to have, make sure we're demystifying some of these energy terms to the public and help them understand. And we are technology agnostic. We're not a pro or a con. These are the advantages, these are the opportunities, these are the challenges on these. And recently we've been in a large NSF engines proposal with a large group around nuclear supply chain and looking at workforce activities. And we've also been doing some work with Amazon and others on looking at large loads and their impact and how do we work that across the energy ecosystem. When we talk about energy, we can't really talk about energy without talking about food, energy, and water, or the few nexus that we talk about. As you can see on the picture on the left, the map has the different, Washington is surrounded by lots of different energy sources. Obviously, hydro, the big blue bubbles are there. We also have hydro. I mentioned in my earlier talk, we talked about Grand Coulee Dam. But if you look at this, all the red dams in the top 10 are along the Columbia River dams. So we have a lot of hydro that we've talked about in there. And then the bottom is the irrigation. And the largest irrigation projects in the U.S., those are also across Washington. And so there's a lot going on in the water, in hydro, as well as energy, as well as agriculture, as we talk about irrigation. And the challenge is when we change one of these, we change others. It was mentioned earlier by the fact that in July and August, when we don't get as much precipitation, we don't get as much hydro because we can't run the hydro at its maximum because of constraints around water level and both recreational as well as different fish issues related to that. Where am I supposed to point? Oh, of course. There we go. Okay, so let's talk about agrivoltaics power of the orchard of the future. And I have up in the upper right-hand corner, some of you may say, well, why is this becoming a big issue in agriculture? And it turns out that we have a Cosmic Crisp there beside the carbon footprint, and we also have McDonald's French fries. Well, Costco, Walmart, a lot of international groups want to know the carbon footprint of that apple, how it was grown, how it was stored, how it was processed. We also have, same thing, McDonald's with French fries. What is the carbon footprint as we process some of these different agricultural products into food? And WSU is fortunate to get a grant from the Department of Commerce to do a dual solar project, to put solar cells over top of an apple orchard. Now, when we first talked to this with my colleague Chad, I'm like, I'm an engineer, this is counterintuitive. Why would you put solar over top of apples? You see, you need sun. But it turns out apples get sunburned. Who knew? And so it turns out that other challenges, the sunburn isn't evident until you get them out of storage. And so in some, like Honeycrisp, some of them will have 50% loss. And so they can't be sold as an apple, they're sold as applesauce or apple cider, all good things, but they can't be sold for the high value products. We're also, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of that. We've also got, you see this tractor, and I love this EV next to this e-tractor charging up. And there's a lot of fuel that's used in farming. And so how do we look at how we can electrify some of that? Oh, of course. Sorry. Okay, I'll go faster here real quick. So with the time we have. But the farming and energy integration, and solar. And I know these maps are hard to find, and the slides will be up so you can look at them, and if you want more detail, I can provide that. But as we look at the little dots that you can see on the left first, is those are all different crop groups that are less than 1 mile from a substation. So you could electrify parts of that, for instance, the orchards or other parts of that, and provide electricity not only for yourself, but for the farm, but also export that. And it turns out there's 87,000 acres of highly suitable crop and pasture land within 1 mile of a substation. Now that could turn into 8.7 to 17.4 gigawatts of solar capacity, and orchards are 50% of that. We also have, if you've ever flown over Washington, you've seen the crop circles, right? Well, the crop circles have corners, and there's actually 40,000 acres of pivot corners that you could put solar on and have electricity. And so these are ways we're looking at system-level approaches. Another thing that was brought up by Monica, as well as our WSU student, is workforce. How do we help students think about the system and not just their area? Whether it's AI and grid, whether it's looking at the food, energy, water nexus, lots of different majors can be part of that and be part of those solutions. And we're working in that area. Jillian Cadwell, who's in the back, works with our student engagement activities, and our students went to look at part of the irrigation basin improvements, as well as, this is a picture of them at the Sunrise Research Orchard, where the solar cells are going to be going up, and learning about that. So having students involved is really important, and our Energy Ambassadors Network is helping us have students do that. So solutions include teamwork and partnerships. So first of all, our INEF leadership, and I think I see 2 people here. Chad was here earlier, so he may be coming to other parts, but I'm the director. Jonas Demisi is our Assistant Director for Energy and Environment. Chad Kruger, Assistant Director for Agriculture, Extension and Outreach. Jillian Cadwell, Assistant Director for Program Development and Student Engagement. And Georgine Yorgi with the WSU Energy Program is our Assistant Director for Energy Extension. The state of Washington provided funding for us to have support, administrative support and staff support, but also to hire 7 new faculty in areas across the energy ecosystem. And one faculty member starting this fall in critical materials, and then we have a power electronic one that will be in Poland. 5 will be in the Tri-Cities area, nuclear, as well as 4 that go across the board. They're not just a certain area, but life cycle analysis, data analytics, AI and energy, economic analysis, and energy policy. Those will go across a lot of the different energy ecosystems. Okay, so we actually have 26. No, do not restart. I don't know if I can do that. Anyway, hopefully it's not restarting. But anyway, you can't see that. I can see it on my screen, so I'm not going crazy. We have 26 different entities across WSU system that touch on energy. And so what we wanted to do is try to have partnerships with that. Now I can't talk about all 26 in the minute I have left, but I do want to talk about the WSU Energy Program. The WSU Energy Program was really established, it was established in the late 90s to look to, as an engineering extension type of activity in energy, to look at more boots on the ground activities and implementing these technologies, helping with tech assistance. And there's a large group, it's centered in Olympia, but also with a virtual team that's looking at this to try to improve energy efficiency and develop solutions that go to the grassroots. So one of the things they work with is electric school buses, and have done a lot of work in that area. About 1 out of 6 districts now by 2024 have electric school buses, and there's also work on solar projects for systems near schools. The other thing they do that's really interesting is look at write reports with typically working with Commerce or other groups in the state. And this is one looking at pump storage, hydropower siting, and then least conflict solar siting. Although the author of the least conflict said it's really less conflict because there's really not a least conflict where you have some least. And then George, who's here, has been involved, as well as others at Commerce and the energy program, on looking at transmission, looking at the transmission grid. We've talked about planning and some of what we're doing with that, but looking at some of these, how do we have policies that are encourage us to move things forward? So we're working, WSU INEF is working with the energy program to help advance these. So here's some opportunities for engagement that we have, and related to reaching out to learn more about INEF. If you have any questions, you can catch me here or email us. Food, energy, water. If you want to be involved to have a perspective, like Jim was saying, to make sure people have multiple perspectives, I think that will help us all in the solutions. Speakers for our panels, research projects, as well as educational activities, lots of opportunities to get involved. And that's our LinkedIn. If you want to take a picture of our LinkedIn, that's a QR code for that. So last, I think. Yes, I just want to thank the co-directors for the opportunity to talk to you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Question?
Thank you. My name is Marcus Beerta from Cascadia Renewables. I guess the questions for the entire panel. We develop microgrids for utilities, communities, tribes, municipalities in the context of resilience. With Bonneville's decision to join SPP's Markets Plus, we see that as an opportunity to align the physical, the policy programs within utilities and the kind of programming and constraints coming to the grid. So my question is, how can Bonneville support load-following utilities to develop demand-side resource programs that ameliorate that.
So I'm going to suggest, since it's for the whole panel, maybe we wait, because we have a fourth speaker, correct? Yeah.
It's just AGM, yeah.
It's just AGM. Yeah. So if you can hold that question, and that way the full panel can answer it.
I'll work on shortening it.
No, at the end of Ray's presentation. Thank you.
Well, Noel, before you run away, quick question
Oh,
is, I didn't hear anything about either carbon capture, sequestration, or geothermal and horizontal drilling, that sort of thing. Are
so
you guys
we're
moving
seeing
that?
a lot of interest in those topics in the last 6 months. As we looked at it in the last, we're a 2-year-old organization, so the emphasis we got started on was with nuclear and the ag, the food, energy, water. A lot of interest in those areas, some projects. We had some projects on carbon capture, and some of those have been scaled back. But there's a lot of interest in both the geothermal as well as carbon capture, and I see that being part of that future grid, is having those in there as part of the solutions. So, thanks, Larry.
All right, so we're going to move forward with just AGI presentation now. And give you a brief update on what we have been up to and some of our research highlights. Okay, so yep, I think I introduced it off. Maybe next slide.
So yeah, so Namina and I will give a joint presentation to provide an update on AGI and some research highlights. So I think everyone already knows now. So AGI brings together complementary and synergistic expertise, and combining the unique talents and resources of both institutions to address some major challenges faced by the regional grid, especially for those issues I think neither partner can address by itself. So we have different kind of overarching strategies. The first thing is that we like to identify strategic areas of research focus aligned with regional needs and organization strengths, because we also want to work on some areas that we are really strong in those areas. And also we focus on solving the regional issues, but I think the solutions provided by AGI does not necessarily have to be only to apply to this region. Maybe some other regions also have similar issues, and our solution can also be applied to other regions, so that we can also have a national level impact.
Yep. So as Ray said, we are going to tag team on this. So we started thinking about the strategy for research for the AGI and what we focus on. And this slide kind of highlights some of the key scientific and technical challenges that we have heard from the region's perspective, and as Ray said, broadly it applies to the nation in terms of many of these challenges. So Pacific Northwest region is unique in the sense that how we actually generate, dispatch, and distribute energy. We have 22 balancing authorities, we have 60 plus utilities in Washington state alone. We have regional diversity of urban, rural, and indigenous communities. The region is actually now, like nation, is inundated with large load growth driven by AI data center growth, and there are of course unique threats to grid resiliency with wildfires, which we are going to learn more about later in the session. So, so bottom line is that we are seeing the increasing grid complexity and scale with, of course, what's happening at the grid scale, or basically load level, right? And the grid edge is now transferring to the load level transformation with the AI data center probably added at different levels. Changing paradigm for grid modeling and control with, of course, these inverter-based resources, which are not just for generation now, but also for these loads, which are these large loads and data centers. And there are several cross-domain and cross-infrastructure influences with all the things that are changing with technology, with markets, with policies, and what's going on in the region. So we kind of thought about these challenges and started thinking about what our strategy should be and what are some of the key areas we should focus on, and we're going to briefly talk about that.
So briefly talk about our research focus. Just try to use a system-centric approach to assist with building affordable, reliable, and secure regional grid. So I just want to briefly mention our 3 research focus. So the first one is energy analytics and decision support. The second one is power electronics influence on power systems. And the third one is resilience to all hazards. So in the next few slides, we'll introduce more details there.
I can start talking, and there is a very scary window here that I'm seeing. It says that your system is going to restart at 11:58. So we get through all the slides. So the first topic is on energy analytics and decision support. I think it's a core area of theme on how complexity is growing in the grid, right? So we have essentially, of course, a lot of things being added at the grid edge, and now, of course, at the sub-transmission and transmission level as well, with these loads which are of different characteristics than what we are used to, how they operate and how they change, of course, the system characteristics itself. Then we are also seeing, scalability across interconnected transmission and distribution systems. We had a very nice conversation with our industry advisory board yesterday, talking about how the boundaries between transmission and distribution systems is blurring, and we have to think about these systems together. And when we think about these systems together, it's actually a very, very large system. I teach E361, it's fundamental from first course for power systems. I tell my students, showing a slide on all the generating plants which are in US, and ask them that why are you studying power systems with all the generating plants in US, versus if you study electronics, you just see a small electronic board. And someone was actually smart enough to say that because it's all one machine. I said that's true, but it's actually 3 machines. But yeah, that's the fact. So we are actually dealing with that level of challenge, that level of scalability problems that we are seeing, and we need to really also blur the boundary between planning and operation. That again creates a huge challenge in terms of how quickly we solve and are able to study and analyze the system. And a lot of modeling, analysis, and control challenges, which basically is something really we look forward to. So that's basically what our first research theme is, and we're going to move on to the next slide. These are some of the key areas where we are focusing on. I'm not going to bore you with all this. The main point is we are looking into how do we study this large-scale system that we are dealing with in terms of really modeling it, analyzing it, and proposing solutions that can help us manage the resources at that scale while still keeping the lights on with all the things that are being thrown at us from cybersecurity threats, from wildfires, from all the other things. So I think that's kind of what we're doing in this particular team. We are specifically focusing on working with the modeling analysis to control challenges, and I have some key areas identified, which is what this slide shows. And we have some projects in that particular thematic area which we are currently working on. You're welcome to chat with me later in the session to talk about this area. We can move on to R&D.
Okay, so I will talk about the second R&D area, which is power electronics influence on power systems. So, as you can see in this picture, the power electronics plays a very important role in power system across generation, transmission, distribution, and the loads. At the generation side, inverter-based resources like energy storage systems, solar and wind plants, they all connect to the systems to the power electronics converter. And the transmission grid, we have the HVDC and the fax devices. And at the distribution level, you can see microgrids and the distributed energy resources. And at the load side, nowadays, so popular, everyone talk about the data center, right? But data center all connect to systems to power electronics. So power electronics is really a key technology between those new devices connect to the grid. They fundamentally change the physics of the system, bring new challenges, but power electronics is also an enabling technology. They can address a lot of challenges and bring new opportunities to the grid. Okay, so we identified a few R&D topics, but I don't want to go through all of them. But PNNL is really strong in power grid modeling. We want to bring our expertise in power electronics modeling to strengthen the understanding of the future grid with a high penetration of power electronics. Key topics like new stability theories to understand the new dynamics caused by the power electronics in power systems. And advanced modeling and simulation tools to study the power system with high penetration of power electronics. And maybe control and protection co-design. And also data center and the inverter stability and their reliability impact analysis. So I don't want to talk too many projects, but I want to briefly talk about new challenges, and which is also a new opportunity. I think Crystal mentioned in the morning keynote session, the load growth is big challenging. But the load challenges is not just about their size, but also because of new types of load. Let's take this data center as an example. If you look at inside the data center, 85% of the loads actually are power electronic based. And their size could be increased from 100 megawatts to 1,000 megawatts in the future. And they are not the traditional type of load which is stable, but they are really unstable loads because when you train your machine learning models, these loads can increase from 0 to 100 megawatts within one cycle and go back to 0 within a few other cycles. So this really is fast load fluctuation. We believe that will cause stability issues to the grid because today's machine-based generators, natural gas, they are not really designed to power this kind of fast fluctuating load, right? Which will probably damage their turbines. So in my opinion is that machine-based resources like natural gas, maybe geothermal, and maybe small modular reactors, they need to work together with inverter-based resources, especially energy storage system. So you can use energy storage to mitigate those fast load fluctuations. But power electronics is the enabling technology behind this. We need that enable all the resources to work together to meet the load growth.
Yeah, and finally the third theme is on grid resilience to all hazards. We really cannot go anywhere in grid research without talking about resilience. So this particular topic is over-encompassing, looking into all hazard scenarios, weather-related disasters, as well as cyber security threats. And our goal is to really bring interdisciplinary experts in this particular space and talk about this problem from multiple views, multiple aspects, and bridge some of those gaps that the literature has by looking into this problem in a cross-disciplinary manner. So essentially what we have been doing is we have been, in this particular space, we have been building and identifying some questions that we need to work together. And those include hazard, probably we can move to the next slide. Those include actually hazard modeling, simulation, and seeing the impacts on the grid, visualization in ahead of time, and figuring out planning and operational solutions to manage them. And that does require us to work with researchers across the team who work in hazard modeling space, who work in cybersecurity threat assessment, who work in different areas and bring those expertise within the grid research and talk about how do we actually come up with solutions, both at the planning as well as operational levels to manage these disasters, manage these challenges that we will see. Now the solutions of course kind of overlap probably with the grid analytics a little bit, but at the end of it here we are looking into more focused approach to understanding the threats for the grid itself and what are the solutions that needs to really work here, which are more flexible in nature rather than more planned ahead of time to manage the cost and benefit trade-off here. So, and one of the key themes here in this particular area lies the risk assessment and risk analysis, and how do we bring the concept of risk within the analysis that we do at the grid level at different stages. That's this area. We definitely have some ongoing projects in the space. We'll hear more about it in the afternoon, so I'm not going to talk about, there's one we are highlighting here that Mani is going to talk about in the afternoon. But those are the three themes that HEI has identified as the key area of focus for us. We have different thematic projects within those particular areas which we are already doing, and we are developing those areas. We continuously seek guidance and feedback from our industry advisory board members to keep refining our questions within those themes. But I think I think this probably is that's the project we're talking about, which Mari will talk. And I think that's, oh yeah, I do want to talk about the AGI ecosystem, sorry. So, I don't know, is this your slide?
This is just shows the AGI ecosystem. We have 5 joint appointments for research faculties. For faculties, myself and Kevin are from PNNL side. We hold a joint appointment with WSU. And 3 faculties, Anemika, No, and Mani, they also hold joint appointments with PNNL. And we have our industry engagement advisor, Peter, who will organize the IAB meeting this afternoon. Also, we have the distinguished research program for students. So I think that's a unique thing because these students will be co-advised by faculties at WSU and also research engineers at PNNL. So this year we have 2 new DGRP students, Michelle and Cassie. I hope they are in this room. Oh great, welcome joining us. Yeah, so this is our AGI ecosystem. So next.
Yeah, and our ecosystem is incomplete without our industry advisory board. So our current industry advisory board have 9 members. You will hear more from them in the afternoon, so I won't stand between you and lunch and talk about them all right now. We'll have a panel with them in the afternoon and we'll hear more from them.
And also, I'd like to acknowledge our supporting team. We have 3 staff members from PNNL side, Jazz, Carla, and Ginger, and also 3 supporting members from WSU side, Jake, Joy, and Jenny. They really help a lot on organizing this event, so really appreciate their support.
I just wanted to say that this event was made possible without them. And all of you are welcome to lunch, and we'll be back at 1 and start the session. Oh, sorry. Questions?
No, there was a question that.
Oh yes, there was a question. Do you remember the question?
Yeah, I remember. I think that question is really very well suited for this afternoon's industry panel session. Yeah, because we are.
I would welcome everyone to answer this question who wants to. I've been trying to refine it, and I guess the bottom line, I'm curious, especially from those of you working with SPP and considering kind of all of that, how Markets Plus can deliver incentives to load-following utilities and ratepayers that value community resilience while addressing all of the economic and load growth problems as outlined by Crystal and UCC.
This is a question for our industry advisory board members. Anyone wants to? Oh, done.
It's a great question. I'm a strong believer and supporter when we think of loads, flexibility, how do we create that environment, the products that we use, the intelligence we're putting into those products for customers today. There's lots of advancements happening there. Control systems are being put in, a lot of distributed energy resource management systems are going into play, and I would just say that utilities want to take advantage of that. We need to get better utilization of the system while pushing capacity down. And so some of us have some pretty aggressive targets to achieve that and pressing that down. So yes, I'll just say markets can help in enabling that. Shouldn't be the driver in many ways. What needs to happen is, again, cost and affordability is really critical. And so keeping us from those demands that Crystal showed us this morning, summer peaks, winter peaks, they only happen a few days a year. How do we drive that down? We just went through one last week, and I can't tell you how much, that extra 130 megawatts of those types of resources helped us to get through that period of time. So it's there, it's available. We need to advance that. We, collectively as an industry, need to be promoting that. Now I'm going to add on to your question though, because this is one for, I think, our research folks. You brought up an SPP, but there's also a day-ahead market. And in the Northwest, we operate where we have multiple entities with transmission lines that run across each other, and we're heading into having RCs that are next to each other. We're heading into markets that are driven separately. How do we solve that? And when people say there's easy to solve seams issues, I'm going to challenge you. I would like to see those answers as we move forward. So anyway, from a research perspective, I think there's some ideas that need to be thought about in that space.
So we took that as a research agenda for us.
This is Veera Virakota, independent consultant. Was with PC Hydro and California for 10 years each, mostly focusing on the grid reliability and applications, models. But the question is so far, it has been these DERs have been in place for some time. How the AGC, which is primarily the main controlling the secondary control of the grid. How is it getting all these DERs? Are they integrated into the overall control scheme? As far as the research that has been happening now to provide a reliable grid control.
All right, can you hear me? That's a great question, and one that I think I would say that we don't have, I would say, the full answer for that. A key challenge, right, we've been using demand response and edge resources in various areas and for success for quite a while. And I think the challenge we have is that we're trying to solve big resource adequacy problems. Some of those barriers that really have to look is, how can we have enough trust in the aggregation of those resources distributed out to be able to count on it as part of that overall broad solution at high scale. And so that involves, every question, every conference or topic, or every time we talk about this topic in a conference, we talk about some of the technical solutions, technical problems, whether it's standards, interoperability, the right kind of visibility to be able to have awareness. We talk about markets and incentives, and then eventually we get to policy and regulation. And so this is a very difficult problem for us, but I think it's one where we have. It feels to me like we have the mechanics of being able to do this. There's challenges to actually build out and get it set up there, but it really goes into aligning on the right business models, the right ways to encourage, incentive, and move forward. We do have lots of coordination, control, technology pieces of it, but I think we can work on those if we get some concerted effort around how do we come together, not just as one utility, not necessarily even as just one region, but how can we get some consistency across the grid at large, or the three grids at large that we want to really be utilizing. So sorry, not a great, here's the answer. I would say there's a heavy amount of focus on that, for sure, in our programs.
Great. Okay. So,
Lunchtime.
yeah, we should break for now. We've already ate 10 minutes of your time, so we should have it on. Thanks very much.
Thank you. So if you have any questions to the panelists and our previous speakers, please feel free to ask during the break session. So our